second. There are plenty of seats in this corner of the room if anyone's looking for a seat. Okay. Alrighty. It's good to be back with you guys in our second week of the series that we started last week called Made for Connection. Last week we spoke about how there was this movement that is happening that is pushing us into loneliness. And we have to swim against the tidal wave and we have to push through because friendship doesn't have to just happen, you have to run after it. We spoke about how, despite being surrounded by many people, we still feel lonely because our relationships are often just superficial. And then we spoke about how the true connection reflects the relational nature of God, how the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are relational, and how they created us to be in their image and likeness. So the byproduct, if God is relational, then we ought to be relational as well. We spoke about reaching out to friends, prioritizing quality time, and cultivating authentic, supportive relationships that point us to Christ. And we spoke about the idea of vulnerability. We spoke about how I asked a sharp question to many people, and I've received a bunch of text messages this week about this question that I asked, is do you have anyone in your life that you have zero secrets with, that know every single thing about you? Is there anyone in your life? And how that actually, the ability to be authentic, the ability to have somebody in your life that can point you to who God is calling you to be is a really important thing because we're not meant to be alone. And in fact, we can't really come to know God fully without one another. So that was week one. But I have a question to ask every single one of you. I said this last week, but do you really want a friend? Like, honestly. Because if you really want a friend, you have to chase after one. You have to chase after one. It just doesn't happen. Now, people often be like, Abuna, I wish people would just invite me, include me, do all these different things to me, but you have to chase after friendships. Is there somebody that you are sort of looking at and noticing in your life, like, that guy is really cool. I really want to get to know that person. That person is more spiritual than me. I really want to be as spiritual as that person. You have to chase after a friend if you really want one. It's not just going to happen naturally. But I have a follow-up question to that. Are you sure? The reason why I ask, are you sure, is because a real friend will speak the truth to you. A real friend will speak the truth to you. A real friend will tell you when you're off. A real friend will tell you when you're doing the right thing. A real friend will be somebody that points you to Christ. The question is, are you willing to actually have the friend in your life that will actually call you out on your shortcomings? And I will venture to say that most of us, the moment that somebody ever gives you a little bit of constructive feedback, you tend to push that person away. I know it in my own life. I know it in my own life that sometimes the people that are going to push a little bit, I'm like, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're less spiritual than I am. And you just try to discount the voices of people around you. So my question to you is, if you're running after a friend, and God ends up giving you a friend, are you sure that you want to keep that friend? Because with a friendship, there's going to be the encouragement, but there's also going to be the times where they're going to be calling you out. But the reality is, a real friend will never watch you self-destruct. A real friend will never see you in a situation that you're in where it's off and just leave you there. So that's why real friendship requires honesty. And I want to talk about the subject of honesty today because I think when we think about our friendships, how many of us are scared to speak up and tell one another the truth? There's plenty of seats up here, guys, in the front. If anyone is standing in the back and wants to come in, somebody will usher you up to the front. I want to make sure that everybody comes in and you all have the ability to benefit. So if vulnerability is revealing the truth about ourselves, being open, sharing the truth, then honesty is speaking the truth to others. Honesty is speaking the truth to others. If vulnerability is being open and sharing and revealing things about yourself, then honesty is speaking the truth. Without honesty, I will venture to say that our relationships will remain shallow and rooted in politeness rather than love. How many of us have polite friendships? Hey man, how's it going? What's happened in your life? Oh, what's the most recent vacation that you've been on? Oh, what's your favorite latte at Starbucks? Oh, hey, I like your dress, it's so cute. Hey, fresh cut, nice fade. Our relationships are often modeled in this like just superficial, shallow, polite. And in truth, that superficial, polite is like the starting point sometimes. But imagine every single one of your friendships are like that. Just water cooler talk. You know the water cooler? You know, back in the day when people actually went to their office, they'd go to the water cooler, and that was the place where people congregated. Now everybody's like virtual and all this funny business. People don't even speak to each other. They talk through Zoom. Anyway, our relationships are all weird now as a result of COVID, even though we're 4 years out of this. We have these like superficial sort of relationships. Okay, I want to be honest, Abuna. I want to have a real friendship. I want to be vulnerable. I want to take this next step in relationships. I want to be truthful. And let me ask you a question. How many of us also have friendships that are just beating you down? How many of us have friendships that are like uber critical of us? You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing this. You should do this. You do this. That doesn't look good. Like just uber critical like friendships. Are they actually friendships? And this is why I want to talk about this delicate balance of being an encouraging friend, but also being an honest friend. Being an encouraging friend, but not being too honest sometimes. Sometimes we're a little bit too honest all the time, where all we do is just knock people down. So there's a delicate balance. So I want to speak about this idea of words and the power of words and the impact of words. In Latin, the word the word bless, to bless someone, means to say good things of someone. And we know actually scripturally that there is a creative power of words. We know that when God spoke in the word into the universe, he spoke the world into existence. Words have a creative power. Words have the ability to create something in someone. And I'm going to explain to you what that means in a second. How your words can actually create something in someone. How many of us, I'll give you a basic example. Your parents told you you were a failure. And you believe that about yourself. Right? Because words can have a really powerful impact on you because it can create something in you if you allow it to. We know that when God gave Adam the creative responsibility or the co-creative responsibility with him in the garden, what did he tell him to do? He said, you name the animals. You name the animals. I want to give you a responsibility in this creative process because when you name the animals, you have a participation in making sure that you take care of the animals. And in fact, when Adam created the animals, or named the animals, he named them after an attribute that he saw in God. We spoke about this before. That when God named the animals, when he looked at the animals, he looked to God and he said, that is a dog, one who has an empathetic heart. He reminds me of the empathy, Kalev, he who has an empathetic heart. When you look to a lamb, he who covers me. Every single name in Hebrew has a connection into the person of God. So when God is giving Adam the responsibility of naming the animals, he's giving him a responsibility to give him like a share in the creative process, but also it's something that reflected the character of who God is. So what I'm trying to say here is that words have a really powerful way in building people up, creating something in somebody. Words have the power to speak an identity into someone. How many of you, somebody said to you something one time in your life that you'll never forget? Something that was like a defining moment in your life. Somebody said something really powerful to you that encouraged you. Hey, I'm really proud of you. What you're doing is really great. Hey, you're a really great deacon. Hey, you have a really great artistic ability to do this. Hey, you're really good at so and so and so. Somebody spoke something into you, and when they spoke that into you, they did something in you. Something changed. There was a powerful movement that happened in you because words have a creative power. But there's also the other side of words, which words have a dangerous power. We know that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and that they that love it shall eat the fruit of thereof. So death and life are in the power of the tongue. You have the ability to give life to somebody, but you have the ability also to totally destroy somebody. So the reality is our words have the ability to shape reality, either building up or tearing down. Now, I'm going to talk to you about this idea of honesty in a second. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. So you need to bear with me because I'm going to be painfully honest. Because if I can't be honest with you as your father, then who can? Like if the church can't be honest with you and tell you the truth, then who can be honest with you? Who are you going to get honesty from? So forgive me if this is a little bit of a tough message in the next few minutes. I'm caveating it and kind of giving you a little bit of like it's out of love. It's not out of discouragement. Honesty is like a renovation. Honesty in friendship is like a messy project of rebuilding a home or transforming a home. It involves tearing down false beliefs and building up what is true. So I'm going to try to tear down some of the false beliefs that we have about what friendship is, but I'm going to try to encourage you to build on what is actually true. Because I believe wholeheartedly that Jesus was the ultimate renovator. Jesus never saw people in their circumstances and left them the way they were. He came in, and by his encounter with them, he transformed them or encouraged them to the path forward. In fact, when you look at the Pharisees were following a set of rules. They followed 614 Jewish laws to the T. These people were like, okay, I should not do this, I can't do this. Even they had a prayer for bowel movements. Do you guys know that? Like in the Jewish tradition, there's a prayer for the removal of your bowels, that you pray that God would there is literally a little harf, every single thing has a specific thing that you have to do. And that's why we always will make fun of somebody, stop being a Pharisee. We don't want you to be just a letter of the law, we want you to understand the spirit of the law. Because Jesus wanted to rebuke the Pharisees. Why? Because they missed the whole spirit of why they were doing what they were doing. There was a spirit that he was trying to give to them, a spirit of love, a spirit of encouragement. You knock people down, you place burdens on people that you yourself can't even carry. You whitewash tombs. You make the cup of the outside of the cup look clean, but the inside is filled with condemnation. He rebuked them, but do you think he rebuked them and he wanted to leave them that way? Wasn't there one of the Pharisees that actually changed his life? Also known as Nicodemus, also known as Joseph of Arimathea, also known as those who follow, even Gamaliel later on, right? Wasn't there another one named St. Paul, Saul of Tarsus? Right? He never wanted the Pharisees to stay where they were, but when he rebuked them, those who actually were willing to be rebuked, those who actually saw the life between what Christ was saying, they were actually willing to change their lives. So Jesus is the ultimate renovator. He never wants to leave us in the situation that we're in. He never wants to leave us in our anger, in our bitterness, in our sin. He wants to call us out to who we can be and who we should be. When you think about the woman caught in adultery in John 8, what did he do? Did he sit there on the floor while she was caught in the act and people are about to throw stones at her? Did he sit there and rebuke her? He said, "Woman, where are your accusers? Where are your accusers?" And he tells those who are accusing them, whoever of you is without sin, let him be the first to cast the stone. So what does he do? In that moment, he speaks gently to the woman who's caught in the act of sin. Not that he's okaying what she did, but he's trying to point her to who she actually can be. Go and sin no more, my beloved daughter. Imagine when he's on the floor with her and writing on the floor. We don't know what he was actually writing, but imagine that moment, how she must have felt, thank you, Jesus, for eyes being on somebody else but me. Thank you, Jesus. Because what he wants to do is he wants to call her to who she can be. He calls out Martha. Remember Martha? Martha, Martha. She's upset at her sister Mary. He's like, Jesus, do you not care that my sister here is leaving me hanging while I'm feeding and cooking all your friends? Come on, help a sister out. And he says, Martha, Martha, you are worried about many things, but one thing is needed. One thing is needed. He tells her, even in that moment where she's upset, he's not I understand, Martha, I understand, you're busy. He's like, no. This is the most important thing. Leave what you're doing and sit right here at your feet. And your sister has understood that clearly. So Jesus, we have this understanding that sometimes we kind of look at Christ as he is just always be tub, always is letting people stay where they are. No, Christ was constantly calling people out to point them to who? To who they could be, who they should be. The loving grace of Christ finds you where you are, but never leaves you there. The love of God will always find you where you are, but it's constantly trying to point you to who you should be and can be. And that's why people always say, Abuna, I want to just come as I am. Yes, come as you are. But the goal is, don't leave as you came. Come as you are, but don't leave as you came. And the fact, God doesn't want you to leave as you came. God wants you to come as you are with all of your brokenness, with all of your shortcomings, but he wants you to leave with the power of God. He wants you to leave with God dwelling in you. And that's the point of this whole hospital that we're in. The hospital that we're in right here this is a place in which all of us are coming in broken and beaten down, and he comes and he heals us as our physician. But he has to be honest with us. And he's the ultimate renovator. He doesn't want to leave us in a house that's crooked. He doesn't want to leave us in where some parts, the outside of the house looks clean. Imagine you're building a house, and the outside of the house looks amazing, and then inside, none of the rooms are built out. Would you say that's a nice house? You'd be like, all right, you got to get some more money in the budget to finish the rest of the job, right? Sometimes the outside of our house looks so pristine, but the inside is a mess. It's a mess. Me first and foremost. And God doesn't want to leave us like that. And our friendships shouldn't leave us like that. Sometimes our friends are like, I spoke about this last week, sometimes we like to attract people that are way worse than us so we can feel better about ourselves. It's like, I'd love to hang out with this person who's a loser because at least I'm better than them. Forgive me. That person is not meant to be a loser perpetually unless they choose that. That person has the potential, who has the image of God bearing in them. They're God bearers, every single person. But sometimes we like to surround ourselves with people that are way worse than us to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Not to point that person to a better life or a higher calling, but we just become like those people. We know that the Bible says very clearly, bad company corrupts good habits. So let me ask you a question. Are there areas in your friends' lives that you see need change, but you're afraid to speak up? And even a follow-up to that. Are your friends scared to speak up to you? Are there areas in your friends' lives where you're scared to speak up? And are there areas in your life that your friends are scared to speak up to you? So I want to speak about this idea of rebuke and how it's a form of love. But I want to speak about this concept in Egyptian culture that is a very, very important one. How many of you have heard the expression Malik Shakbir? Malek Shakbir, or Malik Shakbir, Malek Shakbir, pardon the Arabic. In English, it means you don't have like an elder, you don't have like a big. Like, you know how there's like a little and then a big, like a mentee and a mentor? You don't have somebody to like call you out. In Arabic, it has such a powerful meaning because that means that the person doesn't answer to no one. That person has put himself as a moral, spiritual authority on all things, and who can speak to that person? Who can speak to that person? If I think that I have the answers for everything, and I think I'm on top of the world, who can speak to you the truth? You won't hear from the church. You won't hear from your spiritual father. You won't hear from your spouse. You won't hear from your children. Who can speak to you? Who can speak to you? And the danger of that is if I don't have a big, or I don't have a kabir, right? Then will I ever hear the voice of God? Like, do you not believe that God sometimes will use people to speak to you? In fact, there's a prophet of the Lord that one time God spoke through a donkey to him. God used a donkey to speak to him, to rebuke him, to tell him what he was doing. But if we don't have this idea that we're willing to be under the tutelage or the instruction of somebody who's above us, where's our hope? That's why even the Patriarch of Alexandria, what do we call him? The Pope of Alexandria. What do we say to him? We say he's the first among equals. He has to have a spiritual father himself. He has to have somebody that he also answers to. It's a synod. There's an equality in the hierarchy. Every priest has to have a spiritual father that he also answers to. Because when I'm off, somebody has to call me out on it. And in fact, many of the congregation, you all are very good at calling out the priest sometimes when we're doing something. God bless you guys, because if we were above that, if we felt like, oh, who are these people? No, we need that. We also need accountability too. And if you see something that's off in me, please come and tell me. Come and tell me. I'm actually giving you permission. But I want to talk about how you give rebuke. Let's give this a second before you all come at me and start ripping me to shreds. The rebuke is being honest enough to call somebody's attention to a dangerous reality in their life or something that they should avoid. Rebuke is not criticism. It's a profound act of love. Proverbs 27:5-6 says, "Open rebuke is better than love, carefully concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." Faithful are what? The wounds of a friend. Yeah, the wounds of a friend. True rebuke calls someone to a higher standard, but a higher standard with genuine care. Grace, again, meets us where we are, but calls us forward to growth and transformation. So let me talk about this rebuke as a form of love. Rebuke as a form of love is naming a problem in order to call you forward into a better version of yourself in Christ. Calling a problem forward in you to point you to a better reality of yourself in Christ. Let me like caveat this. I'm going to give you some examples on this next chart that I'm going to put up. But let me give you an example of a rebuke. Hey man, I noticed these days that something is off. But I just want to tell you that I really love you and I really appreciate you. and I really see how much God is doing in your life and how powerful his work has been in your life. But there's this area that I've noticed that you're kind of compromising on. This area that you're kind of off. Do you think the person who's sitting there, when they hear all the positive that you've told them, and then the little bit of negative, and then the positive, the sandwich effect? You start with something good, you fill it with something that you want to give feedback to, and then you fill it with something positive. That sandwich effect is very powerful, but there needs to be, I'm just going to listen to the beginning and the end, and I'm going to ignore the middle. That's what a lot of us do. Thank you, Abuna, for all your encouragement, but I missed the whole entire middle part. I care about you, but I'm worried because this behavior doesn't seem like your usual self. Is everything okay? I need to be honest with you because I value our friendship, and what you said or did the other day didn't sit right with me. I think it might hurt others too. You know I love you and I want the best for you. I'm bringing this up because I think it may lead you down a path that could hurt you. I've noticed a change in you lately, and it worries. This isn't the person I know that you are to be. Is there something going on and you want to talk about it? This is a form of gentle, loving rebuke. It's like, hey, where are you at? There's something off with you. I've noticed that you're not your usual self. Why? Because again, if you're a true friend, you got to say it straight, but you got to package it with love, speaking the truth in what? In love. It's not like you are the worst, you stink, your breath stinks, your hair is ugly, you're this, you're that. That's not going to ever change anyone. Believe me, that person's going to be like, I got to run for my life from this person. He's a toxic friendship. But on the contrary, how many of us, the moment somebody gives us even the slightest rebuke, oh, it's a toxic friendship, I can't be in this friendship anymore. Ya salam. It's a toxic friendship because somebody called you out on one thing in your life that you needed to be aware of? I'm going to rant. We as Middle Easterners are insecure, are sensitive, and malnesh kabir. We're insecure, so when somebody calls us out on something, what do you mean? We're sensitive, so the moment somebody says to somebody, it destroys us. It actually destroys us. When somebody says even the slightest thing to you, sometimes what happens is you just totally deflate. Why are you so insecure? Do you not know that you're son of the Most High God? Do you not know that you're the daughter of the Most High King? Why are words that anyone says to you going to totally destroy you? Why not see the good that the person is trying to say to you and trying to point you to a better version of yourself? Why not look past and take everything so sensitive? Why are we so sensitive and so insecure at times? Why can't we see that it takes so much from a person to actually be honest with us? Because here's the reality. Rebuke won't always be perfect. God uses our imperfect words for his purposes. The person who comes to you is not always going to have the perfect words to tell you. Sometimes ask yourself, even if you're the person dishing it, is your intention to build up or to knock down? Is your intention to encourage or to do harm? Is your intention to bruise or to bind up? I always tell my wife, I'm like, sweetie, if you're going to criticize me, just do it with the desire to build me up. Sometimes it's just a little bit, And thank God I have a wife that constantly will put me in check at times. Believe me, a strong man will desire a strong woman. A weak man will want a weak woman. A strong man will want a woman that will call him out and tell him where his weaknesses lie. Because what good is my wife if she's not going to tell me where my shortcomings lie? The person that knows me the best. Now, my wife doesn't only just criticize me. She tells me lots of encouraging things. I love her. God bless her. She's the best. But I'm asking you the question for you yourself. When you give feedback to somebody, is your intention to build them up? When somebody gives feedback to you and you're on the receiving end of it, why do you get so mad if it doesn't come out perfect? Sometimes people will be like, Abuna, the person said something to me and I appreciate it. But did they have to say it that way? Okay, they said it that way. Look past the way they said it and look at what they said. Look past how they said it and look at what they said. Should that person have just left you like that? Or the fact that they actually spoke up genuinely demonstrate that they care about you? If you are constantly, if you're on the receiving end, why are you so mad if it doesn't come out perfect? Is your ego too big? Is your ego too big? Let me explain that concept a little bit about our egos being too big. Years ago, bunch of friends of mine and I were going to DC. And then on the way back, we were coming back from DC, and we decided to play the stupidest game ever. Let me tell you the stupidest game that some of the young ones have done recently as well. Tell me like one thing you like about me, and tell me one thing that you think I can work on. And I remember that circle of friends. We sat together, and we started with the encouraging, building each other up, telling each other all the good. And then when it got to the negative, let me tell you one thing you think you could work on. All of us, all of a sudden, became extremely defensive. Extremely defensive. Me? You think that I'm this way? Are you kidding me? That's you. And as I was preparing this talk, I was reflecting back on that conversation. And I was thinking to myself about how insecure I must have been in that moment. I was one of those people, right? Like, maybe my friends were a lot more humble than me, and they were willing to take the feedback. But for me, on my end, I was like not capable of hearing what they had to say. How could you say that about me? Me. Because the me, the ana, the ego, is sometimes too inflated. A friend will never want to leave you the way you are. A friend will never want to leave you the way you are. A friend is a person who's trying to point you to the kingdom of heaven. And a person who's pointing you to the kingdom of heaven is somebody that sometimes is going to tell you, hey man, you're off. If they don't package it perfectly, cut them some grace. It took a lot of bravery from them to actually speak. It took a lot from them to actually speak. In fact, I would venture to say, most of our friends shy away from, again, saying something because they're scared of our egos. And I don't want to be that person that everybody's talking about me to one another and tell me, oh, like, Abuna Elijah, he's such an arrogant so-and-so and so-and-so and so. Tell me so I could work on it. Tell me so I can actually improve. Tell me so I can actually be better. In fact, in my first few months of priesthood, I learned that very quickly. Sometimes in a priest meeting, I'd be like, we should do this, and we should do this, and we should. Abuna would be like, Int assis khamis da'ayat. And then I started to actually put it in my mind, like, you're right, I am a priest of 5 minutes. What do I know? I'm still in my Pampers, right? Like, lissa fil bumper, Much better in Arabic. Some things are much better in Arabic. So you have the rebuke. Right? But you also have encouragement. There has to be both sides of the spectrum. If I have that friend that's constantly rebuking me, but never the other side of the spectrum, then, see, encouragement is not flattery. It's not like, oh my gosh, you're so pretty. Oh my gosh, your hair is so good. It's rooted in a specific truth. Hey, you're really gifted at writing. You should actually foster that. Hey, you're really good at making people feel like they belong. I'm really thankful for your friendship. Hey, you're really good at making people feel like, they haven't been forgotten, and you're good at checking up on people. Hey, you're really good about planning events. Like a specific truth. Encouragement needs to be specific. It can't be just fluffy. Encouragement gives a person courage. It gives a person courage. It names the good in someone. It calls them to cultivate whatever that specific truth is that you're trying to build in them. If I'm constantly rebuking and never encouraging, then what's the good in that person? See, Barnabas encouraged believers to do what? To continue with the Lord, the son of encouragement. We all need encouragement to thrive, especially from close friends. So how do we give encouragement? I'm always impressed that I'm inspired by the way you're so good at, I see the Lord working in you. You did so well at. There is a part of it that in order to give encouragement, you have to use words that will actually point a person to a specific truth. See, many years ago, before you guys see me in this black galabeya, there's somebody who poured into my life. I have many people that have poured into my life, but one person specifically in this room poured into my life. A person who was very well known, very serving in a church, very active, doing a million things, and would go to Bible studies in Baltimore when the church was going through some hard times there, and would say, hey, come with me. I want you to come with me. And then would tell me, hey, you're going to give the talk. And would sit and listen to a dummy. Like, sit and listen to me, like you're a priest. Why are you sitting and listening to me? That person is Abuna Paul. That person is Abuna Paul from before even priesthood. Years ago, There was a pouring into, and there was always, hey, Abuna, you can do this. Hey, Chris, you can do this. Hey, Chris, you can do this. Hey, you can pour in. Hey, you can do this. Hey, I'm so proud of you. There is an encouragement in a specific truth, not an abstract thing. Not hey, you're a good guy. We're going to make you a priest. No, God has called you to something. I'll never forget, he's at a certain point in my life, he's like, how long are you going to eat the batatas? For how long are you going to keep counting potatoes? You know, God is calling you to something greater. God is calling you to a higher call. And live in that call. Live in that specific call. There's people in your life that are pouring into you. There's people in your life that want to call you to the deeper truth of who you are. And there's people in my life right now that I'm pouring into. There's some of you in this room that are hungry for fatherhood, hungry for somebody to pour into them, hungry for somebody to disciple them. The key thing is you have to find that friend who will do that for you. I'm telling you guys, a real friend has to be honest with you, but has to also encourage you. And I'm worried that many of us are on this path that we're constantly okay with just mediocrity. Ask yourself the question, are my relationships superficial? Do I have somebody that actually can be honest with me? Am I able to be honest with my friends? Is my spiritual father even able to be honest with me? Can I dig into that a little bit? Would you give me permission? How many of us are scared to tell a Buddha the honest truth? How many of us are unable to actually even hear if your spiritual father tells you even the slightest thing off? Abuna is so tough on me. Abuna is so this. Abuna is so that. Abuna, I'm going to switch fathers of confession. I'm done with this guy. If your own spiritual father can't be honest with you, then who can? If your own wife can't be honest with you, then who can? If your own husband can't be honest with you, then who can? If your own bestie can't be honest with you, then who can? See, I'm convinced that the reason why we're lonely is because we don't want real, honest friendships. We don't want authentic friendships. We want somebody to just pat us on the back and say, you're doing a great job. There is the encouragement, but there is, why are you counting potatoes? There is, you have a higher call, but what are you doing wasting your life? There is God is doing great things to you and has the capacity to do great things in your life. But there's the other part of it of stop being a dummy. Shut your mouth. Don't speak so much. There's a necessity for that. And in fact, I'm really grateful for the fathers that we have in this church because thanks be to God, as being a young priest, you have somebody that can hold you accountable. When you have no one that can hold you accountable, again, who will? I'm not willing to hear from the church. I'm not willing to hear from a spiritual father. I'm not willing to hear from a friend. I'm not willing to hear from a spouse. Rabbina Ma'ak. May the Lord be with you. The habits of honest friendship is they have to go beyond surface level talk. Ask intentional questions like, how are you actually doing these days? You're sitting and you're talking about the weather and talking about vacation and talking about Instagram and talking about this and talking about real estate and talking about your 401k and your potential this and potential that. But hey, how are you? How are you actually doing these days? Is there anything that I could pray for you for? Is there anything that you want to share that's been heavy on your heart these days? Let's be real. How many actually I'm not going to ask you show of hands, but I really want to so bad. I really want to so bad. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, but there's a part of me that really wants to. How many of us actually ask those questions in our friendships? So my call to action is I want you to reflect on your friendships this week. I want to ask you the question, are you practicing honesty through both encouragement and rebuke? Ask your friends. Are you actually practicing honesty through encouragement and rebuke, or do you tend to be the more rebuker or the more encourager? Is there that healthy balance? If I just encourage you all the time, I'm never going to point to the reality of the areas that you need to work on. If I'm constantly rebuking you, I'm never going to point out to the truth that you are an image bearer of God. Is there somebody who needs your words of life today? Is there a friend that you've beaten down so hard that just needs a, hey? Are you open to receiving rebuke from a friend who loves you? I want you to take pictures of this week. Like, get your phones out. Take a picture of this. Like, I want you guys to take a picture and ask these questions later. This is not just like a come, let me eat my popcorn, drink my coffee, ربنا معاكم. This is like actual, we call you to action. We call you to do something. Like, I'm asking myself this question. Are my friends able to be honest with me? If somebody rebukes me, does my ego get bruised too much? Is there somebody who needs encouragement today that I really, really need to pour into? Am I open to receiving rebuke? Because the reality is, if we're called for connection, if we're called for deeper friendship, then the reality is we have to be open to this truth. You know, yesterday, there's the World Needs a Father event that's going on here at church. And one of the speaker was talking about how every person needs 10 people in their life. 10 people in their life. And he presented like a table of like, you need like a mentor, a mentee, a disciple, a family member who you like deeply trust, a this, a that. And I looked at the thing, I said, man, our community, this is like 20 years from now. We don't even have friends. Like to talk about a mentor and a mentee and a coach and all these different things, like we don't even know how to have friends. Why do we not know how to have friends? It's because we're so scared to be real and authentic with one another. We're so scared to actually be genuine. We're so scared to rebuke each other in the spirit of love and truth. We're so scared. So how can we get to the point where we have mentors and get to the point where we have people that we're discipling and get to a point where we ask about each other and look out for each other and the church becomes this beautiful orchestra that is working together to create beautiful music? How can we get to that point if we don't even know how to have real authentic friendships? So my challenge is, please, we went through 2 weeks of this series thus far. Walk Talk 1 was asking yourself, do you even have a friend in your life that you can be honest with? Talk 2 is there a piece of you that is unfriendable? Is there a piece of you that's unfriendable? Who are you? Nobody wants to be a friend around a person like that that's not able to take anything. There's people that are constantly struggling in the relationships, and when you ask them, why are you struggling in their relationship? They're the problem. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe they're not the problem. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm the source of the issue. Maybe my ego is a little bit too big, and maybe I'm a little bit unfriendable because of that. You know, pride is like a person with bad breath. Nobody wants to be around them. A person who has a big ego, it's like a person with bad breath. You don't really want to be around that person because all of us in this room, whether you are the prettiest, the richest, at the end, all of our poop stinks. You never heard a Coptic priest say that before. You might get me excommunicated. Whether you are rich, poor, attractive, your poop stinks. So maybe that's the reality that we need to walk around with. I'm not better than any person next to me. And I'm not above anyone calling me out on anything. Because ultimately, in the end, your poop stinks. That's the conclusion of this sermon. May God give us grace. May God give us grace this day and every day to recognize that our poop stinks. I'm totally going to get excommunicated. And to be encouraged by a real friend who will call us out on truth, in truth, to who we can be and who we're failing to be. Who we can be and who we're failing to be. May God give us the grace and the honesty to be true this day and every day.